today? Auntie Tara texted me today and she asked me if I'm ready for my Pravachan. And I thought that was funny because I got so sick yesterday. I was so sick all day. Sweating, cold sweat, fever, everything. And I was still, and then I took cold medicine and I slept, and I was still feeling sick when I woke up. And then I realized, like, where had my mind been before I got sick? And I was holding on to something and letting something bother me a lot. So I said, okay, it's not worth this sickness. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison, right? So I said, okay, I'm gonna let it go. And then I got better, and now I'm here. So I thought that was funny. I hadn't known what to talk about, and then I have to credit Amit for telling me this story about Sati Devi, and I really connected to it. She's a Devi we don't often talk about during Navrat. So I'm going to tell you a story about her. So if you don't know already, Sati Devi was Lord Shiva's first wife. And it all started with Sati Devi loved Lord Shiva. She went to the forest, she meditated, she fasted, she did a lot of penance to get his attention, show how much she loves him. And she would eat nothing but a leaf a day, got to that point. And eventually he was like, he asked her to marry him. So they're married, happily living. Her father is the King Daksh, which is Lord Brahma's son. And he was said to be a very arrogant king. He was not a fan of Lord Shiva. So he said, okay, go get married. And so they're married, and King Daksh is having a yagna, and so they're doing Havan. And he doesn't invite Sati Devi and Lord Shiva to the yagna. They're not invited at all. So Sati Devi is really upset, and she's like, why didn't he invite us? That's so disrespectful to you, Lord Shiva, because all the other gods are going to be there. Lord Brahma is going to be there, Lord Vishnu is going to be there, all the demigods are going to be there. But you're not invited? And so she's really fiery, and she gets mad, and she says, Lord Shiva, let's go to this Havan uninvited. So Lord Shiva says, why do you want to go? And she says, no one who disrespects you can get away with it from me. So he warns her. So Lord Shiva puts his hand on her shoulder, and he says, yes, if you go and she wants to ruin the whole Havan and Yajna and everything. He said, yes, your dad will suffer, your father will suffer if you do this, but you will also suffer. So he's warning her, don't do this. And she insists that she has to. So he says, okay, you go, and I will send my whole army with you. So he calls his army, and he tells them, okay, go with her, protect her, take care of her. So she goes to the Havan, and the second she gets there, her father gets really mad. And he starts to insult Lord Shiva and call him bad names and humiliate him, make fun of his tattoos, the skull and everything, Lord Shiva. And Sati loves Lord Shiva so much she can't bear to hear anything said badly about Lord Shiva. Sorry, it bothers me because that's how I feel when people speak badly about my own family. So she puts her hand on her ears, and she's so ashamed of her father for embarrassing her husband in front of all these gods and all these people. And she said, you made this body, 50% his DNA, right? Made her body, and she said, look what's going to happen to it now. And she goes and she takes pranayam yoga form, and she sits in the Havan, and she allows it to burn her. And so Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu, she had asked them, how could you forget Lord Shiva? And their faces are in shock, and they realize they made a huge mistake because they just named this king as not just king of this kingdom. They had just given him a promotion to king of the universe. So they're like, oh no, this is horrible. We made a huge mistake. So, and they're all in shock because Sati Devi has just put herself into the fire. And poor Lord Shiva's army starts to bawl and cry because they love her, and now they have to go back and tell Lord Shiva, the love of your life just committed suicide. So there's a scuffle, and the Lord Shiva's army is mad, and they want to kill the king and Sati's father. And but Lord Brahma, he's like, okay, he made a mistake, but that's my son. So he protects him with his energy, and they get away. So Lord Shiva's army has to go back to Lord Shiva. And if you see how whenever Lord Shiva calls his army, how they usually greet him, they're so happy and they go, Har Har Mahadev, and they're so joyful and excited. But this time when they go back to Lord Shiva, they are bawling and crying, huge, like these big men, and they're sobbing. And there's so many of them, and so they go to Lord Shiva and they get on their knees, and he's like, what's wrong? Because he knows something's wrong. And Lord Shiva says what happened to Sati, and they tell him, they say, Sati Devi wanted to know why you were banned from the Havan, and immediately Lord Shiva's face changes because he knows that it's not going to be good. And they tell him Lord Daksh started to insult and humiliate you. And Mata Sati, that's what they call her, couldn't bear this, and she committed suicide. So, of course, Lord Shiva isn't happy about that. And he pulls out part of his hair, and he makes this, he manifests this big warrior person to go take care of King Daksh. And that can go on and on and on. But I'm going to end the story there, and I'm going to ask you all a question. The question I asked myself after I heard this story was, why did she commit suicide instead of just going back to Lord Shiva and saying, I disown my father, I don't want him to be my father, I'm going to pretend like he's not my father? Or why didn't she go back to Lord Shiva and say, he did this bad thing to you, you take care of it? Or why didn't she just say, let's move to the other side of the universe, and so I don't have to see him or deal with him anymore? Or something, she didn't have to kill herself. So I want to know why you think she killed herself instead of any other option.
I think that was a sensitive situation where she was in. Being her dad and being her husband, that was a situation she didn't know how to handle it, and she figured if she do this, that would make her, that would be like, I don't disrespect anybody, and everybody would be happy with this. Or this is her point. But it's a sensitive situation. She wanted to hurt her father and her husband. So this is, I think, the reason why my take on it. I don't know.
Well, when I was thinking about that, I thought a few things. I was like, I don't think she did it to spite her father to make him feel bad. I don't think that she did it because she was just so emotional, she couldn't handle it. Sati Devi was very strong and not weak like that. And then I realized that her shame from her father came because she took responsibility in part for what he had said and done. And the reason for that is because that's her own father. And in a way, your parents' actions reflect on you. Your parents' actions are part of you. So as much as she could move or she could do this or do that, he will always be her father by blood. And then I thought about how in Dharma it's written that way. Maybe not in our world. In our world, technically, if your parent does something, it's not your responsibility. You're two separate entities, and you don't get the blame or the glory for what your family member has done. Technically, in our world, it's not. But karmically, we are tied to, we have to accept responsibility for our parents' karma. Karmically, we are tied to our parents. In my life, in so many ways, I think about when I'm at home every night and my dad's in his room alone, and I think about my mom not being with him and he has to live like that the rest of his life. And I can move away and pretend like that's not the reality, but that's not true. But that's also my burden to bear. His suffering is my burden to bear. But anyway, it is said that Lord Shiva is so attached to Sati Devi that she had to be reincarnated as Parvati, and they go on to have baby Ganesh, and they have their happy ending. So I think that's all I'm going to say for tonight. Thanks,